Zen podcast with the chaos guru, Jothi Dugar. Here we fearlessly dive into the crucial issues of our modern, technically driven world. But before we unravel the complexities of our environment, we prioritize you, the human being navigating through it all. I'm your host, Jothi Dugar, affectionately known as the Chaos Guru. Amidst the whirlwind of my life as a technology executive, wellness specialist, life coach, author, speaker, podcast host, dance director, and a proud mom of 3, I've learned a thing or two about finding Zen in the midst of chaos, technically speaking. Join us each month as we engage in conversations with people just like you, exploring ways to lead well from within amidst the chaos of life. Get ready for insightful discussions, practical tips, and a healthy dose of inspiration. And stay tuned for episodes filled with wisdom, warmth, and a touch of chaos right here on Technically Zen. Welcome to our first episode of Technically Zen with Jothi Dugar, the Chaos Guru. Today, we have a very special guest, Stephanie Derdouri, who's a mom, speaker, podcaster, filmmaker, a cyber risk leader, creator, and a very special friend of mine. Welcome, Stephanie. We're so glad to have you on the episode today.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. So let's get right into it. I know the world is dying to hear your input and insight into very important areas that aren't really being talked about in the world today. So I know you have a lot of great stories that I've heard over the years, and it's truly been an inspiration for me as a woman, as a mom myself, and being in the cyber industry as well. Would you be able to share with the public and our audience, that there was a story that you mentioned before that was truly a changing moment in your life where an event happened and you were being guided by professionals in the industry to go a certain direction or to do certain things. And I know you came out of that stronger and more resilient, but also you defied the odds and then just went in a completely different trajectory than what was told to you. So please tell us how you did that.
Sure. Well, I'll get right to it. I was kind of early in my career as a leader in the industry, and I took it upon myself to get a little bit of coaching in that space, which I highly recommend and was something that, again, everybody should do. Now, one thing that I was advised to do was to be aware of how I manifested at work. And when I became a mom, I was advised to be cautious over how many baby pictures I put up, or how much I talked about it, or if I decided to take time off, I just had to put, generic time off, not doctor visit or whatnot. And I took that advice, and I attempted to downplay this aspect of myself that I was becoming more and more a part of who I was. So I operated in this capacity for a few years. And what I realized was that I was really operating in a place where it wasn't really authentic. I was trying to be something in an organization and in an industry that I wasn't, which was I was manifesting as just like everybody else, when I'm not like everybody else. I have a life and responsibilities and commitments that are far different from a number of my colleagues. And it got to a point where it was kind of my breaking point, where I was really frustrated with this particular situation. I was really agitated, and I had gone so far as at this point of actually getting a different coach, one that was actually advising me on how to manage career and childcare and all of the necessities of being a mom and a leader at work. And I'm on the phone with her, pretty much venting about a particular situation, and I'm saying into the phone, I am being asked to put in 130%, but there's only 80% of me to give because I've got all this other stuff I'm doing. And I was going on and on about this, how unfair this was. And then suddenly I was providing her an example of a situation where somebody was putting in 100% and they were doing it consistently. In fact, they were doing 110%. And what happened was that it backfired and it created a big, big, big problem. And I stopped and I said, if this person hadn't been under the pressure to put in 110%, then perhaps this mistake wouldn't have been made and all of this nonsense could have been avoided. And what if that person was only putting in 80%? And then it just dawned on me that 80% was enough. And then it dawned on me that who in the world would be the right person to put into 80%? Me and everybody else like me that is doing the same thing that I'm doing. And so, anyway, it was suddenly this moment of acceptance where I realized that I was just doing exactly what I needed to do. I was prioritizing exactly how I needed to prioritize. And I was coming to every solution and the work in my work in a way that I was bringing my whole self to work because I was allowing myself to take care of the things I needed to take care of outside of work in the right way. Anyhow, I realized that it doesn't always appear in the moment like that's the best choice. But strategically, if you look at the outcomes over a period of time, you can see that it is the right choice. And I do have, I spend a bit of time evaluating where things were before and where things were after I was a mom. And I can tell you that the more I pulled back and I worked at 80%, the better my teams actually operated. So that's another story for another podcast.
It sounds like what you discovered was what is good enough. And sometimes I think as women, we tell ourselves, well, we're not good enough unless we are putting in that 120% or 200%,
Yep.
where we feel like we have to be extraordinary 24/7, and what we consider as extraordinary versus maybe what's actually good enough is what's already extraordinary to begin with to the outside world.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we are the harshest critic, and we have this vision of ourselves that we're trying to adhere to and we're trying to live to. And it's not realistic. And so there's this disconnect between who you are and who you think you need to manifest as, or who you think you need to be. And that creates this kind of perpetual disconnect and unease in us, where we always feel like the need to strive for more. And a lot of it is based on this kind of false illusion of who we think we need to be and how we need to behave and how others perceive us, when in reality, it can be far different. And that, again, it just creates this kind of pain within us that we're living with, and we're trying to always accommodate. It can be helpful for like getting the work done in a day, but over the time, it leads to burnout. It leads to disengagement from work and family and yourself. And so you really got to watch, like, what is your motivation in doing something? Is it because I want to do it and and feel like this is the right thing? Or am I just operating on, some other expectation and how I need to operate?
And that's a great point. You mentioned validation, and a lot of us, including me, have resorted to needing or feeling like we need external validation.
Yes.
And then coming to a state of just acceptance that, wow, the more we strive for external validation, the less fulfilled we feel because the external validation is never going to really meet that internal need within us. And really, the only way to get that is to feel fulfilled within yourself, and to feel like you don't have to compete against the rest of the world. You can just compete within yourself, but also give yourself the grace and acceptance that you are already good enough the way you are. You don't need to meet a certain milestone to love yourself and accept yourself.
Yeah.
And I did want to touch on a different aspect of what you talked about in terms of strength and resiliency. You've mentioned before there was a certain event in your childhood that happened, and you've gotten yourself out of that situation. And that was another defining moment in your life that you had no control over. This
Yeah.
happened when you were a child. Could you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was pretty young. I was 8. I was 8 years old, and I was in a horrific car accident. And it was a drunk driver hit our car, and our car flipped over on the freeway. And so you can imagine how traumatizing that could be. Flash forward, I was in the hospital for multiple weeks. I was unconscious. My parents had been told things like, oh, he'll never walk again. She may be a vegetable. She'll likely never have children. Guess I proved that one wrong,
Among many other things that
among many other things. So I'll forward to a later point in life. So I did heal from that, and I did come out of it in ways that were quite a miracle, and I'm very, very grateful for. But later in life, I started to have complications from that accident. And those complications were probably driven by stress and other needs to fulfill external to obtain external validation, and I was putting myself into a lot of tough classes at the time. I was in the university at the time, and I was getting terribly, terribly sick to the point where I was hospitalized. I think in one particular semester, I think I was hospitalized maybe a dozen times. I mean, this was insane. And it led to two surgeries that happened within the scope of 1 year to address this problem. And after the second surgery, I remember asking the doctor, well, is this going to happen again? And they said, we really don't know. And they were so uncertain about whether it would happen again. And they were so concerned about me that they even did some things during the second surgery. Like they took out my appendix just because they were so afraid that I would potentially have my appendix was fine, but they just decided to remove it. Anyway, that's another discussion. Point being is that they said, we have no idea if this is going to happen to you again. And I was left to figure it out. I continued to be in a ton of pain. I still had all this, mental and psychological trauma that I was working through, and my body wasn't any better. In fact, I was having the same symptoms as before these two surgeries. So over a process, it probably took me about 5 years of internal struggle, but I got my mind around the fact that I was not going to get sick again, and I was not going to have that surgery again. And it was I did heal from that. And I still have moments where my stomach will tighten, and I know that's a sign, and I back off and I go take a nap, and I take care of myself. But to this day, I've never had to relive that. And that was not because, additional surgeries. That was not because I was on medication. That was because I decided to be better. So I think that's amazing that people can do that. Nobody ever told me that. Everybody always said you had to go to the doctor to get well. You couldn't heal yourself.
Yeah, you just proved, I think, to the world that when you put your mind to it, anything can happen, including miracles. And because the mind is where it all starts from. And there's so many studies out there that have shown, they call it, people sometimes make fun of the placebo effect, but it's a true thing. If you tell your mind, I am fine, I'm doing great, I'm going to get through this, that's what's going to come out of it. But
Yeah.
if you tell your mind, nope, I'm going to listen to someone with the white lab coat on because he must be right, and that must be the only way, and that's
Yeah.
it, doom and gloom, then that is going to be your reality. So thank you for sharing that story. As we all know, I've had a similar story, very different reason, through childbirth. But again, like you, was told the same kinds of things. We don't really know what's going on. We don't know why you're in so much pain. But hey, just get a bunch of surgeries done, take this medication, and maybe it'll work, and maybe not. And I think, you know,
Keep taking this medication, go the route of potentially having another surgery, and maybe a bunch of bogus advice. Some of it is, I think, well intended, but it's like, being able to wear every piece of clothing anyone ever gives you. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work.
and unfortunately, many of us are told, well, this is the only way to go, and there
Yeah.
isn't any other choice. And until, like you, I've also had to be like, well, there has to be another way, and I will find it. And I have no idea what I'm talking about. I am not a doctor. I do not wear this
Yeah.
white lab coat, but something is telling me, you mentioned authenticity before. This
Yes.
doesn't feel authentic to me. Like, I don't
Yeah.
see how getting multiple surgeries with no real result guaranteed is the only way to go. Something's telling me there's some other ways as well. Maybe you're not aware of it, but there has to be. And I think as you have experienced, when you seek the answers will come to you. Story and how you brought that mindset to your work and to everything else that you do. So to kudos for that. I do
Yeah.
want to, maybe jump into a little bit on your personal side. I know we've
Yeah.
shared stories about being moms and feeling like we maybe don't share the same thoughts as some other moms out there. And I know, when I started having kids, I have three children of my own, and I used to hear stories of all these moms like, well, our children are our life. That is who we are. We are moms, and that's it.
Yeah.
Everything else we want to do in life just kind of has to be put aside because this is who we are and this is how we're going to define ourselves. And that concept just never resonated with me. I never thought about, I loved, what I do for a living. Of course, when I first started out and had my first daughter, I primarily just had my cybersecurity role. Of course, now I do many other things, but even then, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm gonna, stay on maternity leave for whatever period of time that I'm allowed, and I'm going back to work. It was never a
Yeah.
question for me to for the idea of like, no, I'm going to stay at home for the next whatever number of years, solely to take care of my children. And I know you have a story that you've told me, and how you kind of navigated this motherhood journey,
Yeah.
and also felt like you really don't really resonate with how the common theme is like once you're a mother, like that's who you are and that's what defines you.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have a lot to say on that. And I've developed a private podcast called Cyber Mom that I'd love to link you to and any listeners on this call, because I really wanted to tell that story. I really felt that when I became a mom, there was so much expectation on me that and it was always conflicting. I felt like there was no right answer. If I chose to stay home, it would have been bad. If I chose to go to work, it would have been bad. It was like there was no, and so I did what I felt was right and I followed that path. But I was amazed at how um almost lonely it felt. And every step of the way kind of questioning, am I doing the right thing? Because you're not getting that external validation that we're so used to getting in life when to confirm that we're doing the right thing. So it was initial training ground for me and really breaking free of that external validation, because I realized that if I needed to work in authenticity, I had to follow what I thought was best. And so, I have two kids. My first one was a preemie, and he came very fast and unexpected, and I was like thrust into motherhood much earlier than I thought I wanted to be. Or not that you're ever ready for this, right? You're never ready. But I went into a state of survival mode that I think that probably only other mothers and caretakers may understand. In when you're constantly on call for this little being that is needing your attention, and then just the craziness of realizing that maternity leave was over and I had to go back to work, or I had to choose, right? And it was not choosing to not go back to work would have been a really tough decision for me. I'd spent my life preparing for this role and for doing this work. So I went back, but I went back into a role that wasn't designed for someone that had anything else to do in their life. So it was, I was going against the current by taking on the type of role, the type of responsibilities in the organization I was in. And it was quite a struggle. So I spent a lot of time not giving up. And I think that's what I kept realizing, was that what I could do is I could walk away and I could stop doing this. And I decided to keep coming. I keep going. And then I made this decision. I made this decision. I was like, if if they want me to leave, they will have to tell me. I'm not going to leave and make it easy for them, because it's not easy for me. And I'm not going to make it easy for anyone. And they didn't tell me to leave. They actually gave me like a bonus to stay. There was this, I could do a whole podcast on it. I did actually. I'll send
I
it
was
to you.
gonna say you do
But
have a podcast on that.
I do, I had a moment. I had a moment where I was like, I think I'm done. I don't think this is working out. I've done my best. I've worked as hard as I can work. And I remember getting to work that day and I got a letter, an actual letter. This is back when companies actually sent you letters. And I opened the letter and it was a bonus. It was a retention bonus to stay. So it was like, I guess the universe is telling me to keep going and I decided to. So I would say that, my story is one great success because I made it. I kicked ass. I did amazing things in the time that I was working and with kids. And I'm still working with kids, so it's still continuing. But there's another side of the story, and the other side of the story is that it's not easy. You are challenged. You are confronted. You have to continue to remind yourself that you're not going to give up. And then you also have to have some fun, which is that's where I'm shifting my mindset to like, I need to have some fun. I need to enjoy life a little bit. And because I'm not just work Stephanie, I'm not just mom Stephanie. I am all of the things and I'm worthy of bringing it all forward. So I think we forget that because we get so looped into like the responsibilities of motherhood or the responsibilities of the office that we forget that neither of those are really who you are. You
And
are something
that's a great
greater than that.
way into just realizing that you got to celebrate all of your successes along the way, not just the final destination, and also have fun along the way, and not take life so seriously because there's no point in being in your last moment thinking that, oh, I spend way too much time being totally very serious about things that at the end of the day you realize
Yeah.
like not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, how terrible I missed that meeting at work, or how terrible I didn't, I don't know, make pancakes that Saturday. It's like there's all of this intense pressure to conform to these rules is, I mean, it's there and it can be very unhealthy if we're not paying attention to that and we're not evaluating where these influences are coming from and the difference between this should and this must and like what you really feel compelled to do.
Yes, yes, indeed. So, Stephanie, in the last couple minutes that we have left on this episode, the reason for calling this podcast Technically Zen is twofold. One, it's that we're all in the technology and cyber security fields, or we may be. So, how do we keep ourselves Zen with all this chaos around us? But also, it also drives to the point of all of us may seem, especially leaders like you who just kind of embody the notion of, yeah, I'm technically Zen, but this is people only see the tip of the iceberg. What's really going on? Don't see. All the
Yeah.
hard work that
Yeah.
you put in throughout your life and all of your
Yeah.
different areas, personal and work related. So we all may seem that we're technically Zen, when people look at us, but it's not
There's
because
more.
there's a lot more to it. So
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
one nugget that you can leave our audience? How do you maintain this Zen, not just appearance, but just embody the Zen, even though you have all of this chaos around you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say that because my boss recently told me you're like Switzerland. You just seem to be cool as a cucumber on so many things, and there's like chaos going on behind you. So I will say that I have honed my skills over time, and I wear my attitude like I wear my clothes. I select what I'm going to put on. I select how I'm going to manifest. I think it's a choice. Now, that being said, there are the realities that you're going to have blowups at work. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have somebody's going to get sick. I mean, you name it. There's a long list of things that happen. And you pick whatever attitude you want. You're still dealing with some pretty big and some heavy stuff. And I think that when it comes to those things, I think that it's key to show up authentic and to be authentic because it's if you're carrying the load of everything and but you're not allowing yourself to be authentic, you're basically doing that with one arm tied behind your back. You don't have that strength to continue forward. And I think that with a lot of women and you see a lot of burnout, and a lot of people have left the workforce. They're like, I'm not going to deal with this. And a lot of women in the tech industry in particular are like, I'm done, I'm out. And I think that it comes down to the pressure to not be authentic. And I want to say that you can be authentic. If you're in a place where you don't think you can be authentic, leave that place and find another place where you can be. Because I think that one of the lessons that I learn over and over again is you take it upon yourself to make your life how you want it. You are the creator of that. So you got to find the place and the people to be around. And you have to have your own agency to get where you want to be. So I think being authentic is very important. I think choosing your attitude like you're choosing your clothing is like the first step. I think that you also need to find and surround yourself with people that have a story, that are willing to tell their story and hear yours as well. So I think that through storytelling and through conversation and communication, we're strengthening one another. So that's my advice.
That is the first time I've heard that slogan, wear your attitude like you wear your clothes. That's great. I'm definitely going to put that on my phone and look at the choice of clothing I have at the moment. Like, wow, I really don't like this.
Why am I wearing this like black like vest? I hate this thing. Wear what you wish to wear. And it can grow a habit for the type of attitude you have. That's actually something that I think is the benefit is that it gets easier to do that. What is hard to do is to show up and be authentic. That is a daily practice. You will have to continually remind yourself to do that. So for those of you that, I think there's this expectation that at some point you'll get to a place in life, an age, or you'll have a career level achievement, and you're like, okay, it's all plateau from here. But it's not. It's a day-to-day. It's a day-to-day decision to be well and to just, even defiantly, be well, be okay, be yourself.
Awesome. Well, be well, everyone. Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was such a great first episode of our podcast, and I'm definitely looking forward to more and having you on additional episodes as well. And for our audience, we will have Stephanie's podcast links as well, and all of our information on our website and also on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Technically Zen with the Chaos Guru. We hope you found inspiration and practical wisdom to navigate life's chaos with grace and purpose. To stay connected with me and continue the conversations, you can find me on the links below or on my website, www.jothidugar.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Technically Zen. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread positivity to those who need it most. Until next time, remember to embrace the chaos and find your Zen.